How come some countries like mine and so many others in Africa are poor, while others like the US, Australia, New Zealand, all of those guys are rich? People saying it's malnutrition, people saying it's laziness, others saying, oh, it's racism, slavery, colonialism.
Are you against US aid?
Yeah, I am.
You are against sending millions of dollars to Africa.
I call foreign aid poison.
So how do you feel about capitalism?
That's when I finally stopped being a communist. I was a borderline
You are a
communist.
communist?
I was borderline communist. Oh, yeah.
How are they using environmentalism to keep Africa poor?
If you want freedom and flourishing, you need only two ingredients: freedom, and you need abundant, reliable, affordable energy. That's it.
In April 2025, 3 African presidents signed a deal so bold it sent silent shockwaves through Western capitals. No press conference, no IMF handshakes, no Western consultants. Just steel, signatures, and a promise. We'll build it ourselves. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. Together, they announced a high-speed railway connecting their capitals. But here's the twist. Not a single cent is coming from the World Bank, the IMF, or any former colonial power. But how did they make it possible? Let's find out. This isn't some basic commuter rail or an upgrade of colonial leftovers. It's not a patchwork fix to broken infrastructure. What's being constructed is a new nervous system, a high-speed corridor engineered not just for movement, but for power. For the first time in modern West African history, a railway is being designed not to extract, but to connect. And this time, Africa decides where the tracks lead. The plan is simple in description, but revolutionary in intent. A high-speed rail network linking 3 capital cities, Ouagadougou, Bamako, and Niamey. But around that backbone is a larger system. Bridges, stations, digital signaling, cross-border freight hubs, and a parallel highway that runs alongside the tracks. Together, these form a dual system, rail and road, capable of moving people, goods, and military logistics faster than ever before across AES territory. This is not about convenience, it's about control. These 3 countries have been cut off, geographically, economically, and politically, for decades. As landlocked states, they've always had to rely on ports in foreign hands, truck routes that pass through unstable zones, and financing dictated by faraway capitals. The new transport corridor is their answer to that old trap. It's also highly strategic. Every rail line passes through key agricultural zones, mining hubs, and industrial nodes. By design, the train will unlock domestic productivity, not just international exports. That's a massive departure from the usual pattern where African infrastructure is built around the needs of foreign buyers: mineral to port, cocoa to ship, oil to terminal. This time, it's farm to city, factory to region, market to nation. And then there's speed. High-speed rail isn't just a fancy upgrade, it's a statement of ambition. These trains aren't meant to crawl through outdated lines at a colonial pace. They're designed to move at over 200 kilometers per hour, cutting travel time between capital cities from days to mere hours. That doesn't just improve business. It redefines how people relate to geography, how families migrate, how services are delivered, and how crises are handled. For instance, consider what it means for food. A tomato farmer in eastern Niger, who once lost half his crop to rot during transport, can now reach Bamako's markets before the produce spoils. A textile merchant in Ouagadougou can restock fabrics from Mali in a single day. Entire supply chains once deemed impossible become routine. The rail line doesn't just make markets faster, it makes them possible. But what's equally radical is the decision-making process itself. Most infrastructure in Africa is decided in boardrooms in Washington or Brussels. Not this time. The railway routes were mapped by African engineers, surveyed by local agencies, and approved by leaders who didn't need to ask anyone outside the Sahel for permission. And there's a symbolic touch that no one's talking about yet. The rail stations are being designed to reflect local architecture, not steel glass boxes imported from Europe or Asia. In Niamey, for instance, the central terminal will mirror the design of Hausa royal courts. In Ouagadougou, it will incorporate mossy motifs. That's more than style, it's identity, and it signals a refusal to treat modernity and tradition as enemies. Even the materials speak of rebellion. While global construction firms often import everything, cement, tools, even workers from abroad. The AES project emphasizes local procurement. Regional factories will supply the steel. African labor will lay the tracks. Universities are already establishing training programs for engineers, signaling technicians, and railway planners. This isn't just a train. It's a school, a factory, a workplace, a movement. And yet, it would be a mistake to think this is only about economics. Yes, trade will grow. Yes, jobs will be created. But there's another force being transmitted along these tracks: security. Because the train route isn't just mapped along trade zones. It cuts through areas long destabilized by insurgency, foreign troops, and warlords. And so, this new line isn't just about moving civilians faster. It's about establishing sovereign presence in places where only rebels used to roam. It's the state taking back territory, not with soldiers, but with speed, steel, and presence. So when we ask, what are they building? The answer is simple. A weapon made of concrete, a statement forged in metal, a continent connected not just by tracks, but by will. But this raises an even bigger question. How are they paying for it? And why did they shut out every major Western financier? Let's pause for a second to say, big thank you to the Black Culture Diary community, where Black voices, stories, and legacies are preserved and amplified. By becoming a member, you're not just supporting the channel, you're becoming part of a powerful cultural movement. Let's continue. If the railway is the steel, the silence around its financing is the thunder. Because while the world watched the tracks, they missed the blueprint of money. And that's where the real revolution begins. You see, the most radical part of this project isn't the train, it's who's not allowed near it. No International Monetary Fund, no World Bank, no French Development Bank. Not even the usual parade of Western partners who show up with billion-dollar promises and billion-condition contracts. This time, the Sahel didn't ask. It didn't submit feasibility studies for approval. It didn't beg for budget support or plead for leniency on debt ceilings. Instead, the Alliance of Sahel States AES created a regional investment bank, African-owned, African-governed, and African-funded. That silence you hear from Washington and Brussels, that's the sound of being cut out. But why such a clean break? Because the Sahel has learned a brutal truth. Financing isn't neutral. It's leverage. And for decades, infrastructure financing in Africa has acted less like a helping hand and more like a collar. The donors write the rules, choose the contractors, dictate the repayment schedule, and reserve the right to pull the plug anytime a country steps out of line. Ask any finance minister from the region and they'll tell you, Western loans are rarely about progress. They're about compliance. Compliance with macroeconomic frameworks, with military alliances, with foreign business interests, with privatization demands. The money comes with a manual, and failure to obey means the flow gets cut. Now imagine trying to build a nation's future with that kind of leash. The leaders of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger decided enough was enough. They understood that no sovereignty is complete until it includes financial sovereignty. So they chose the longer, harder road, self-financing. Not because it's easier, but because it's honest. The new investment bank isn't just a funding pool, it's a political firewall. It prevents outside institutions from interfering in procurement, project pacing, or labor hiring. It ensures decisions are made with regional priorities in mind, not the profit margins of European consultants, and it locks the power of the purse within the borders of the alliance. But even more fascinating is how they're funding this bank. Unlike typical state funds backed by external borrowing, the AES Bank will be capitalized through a mix of national resource revenues, diaspora bonds, and sovereign guarantees pooled between the three member states. In short, they are monetizing their own gold, uranium, cotton, and energy sectors, not to extract and export, but to build and retain. This is a structural shift. It challenges the old colonial pipeline where Africa digs, ships, and waits for aid in return. Now, the same resources that once left the continent in silence are being transformed into steel, stations, and sovereignty. Of course, this approach invites risk. Critics argue that the Sahel states, under sanctions, facing insurgencies, and with limited reserves, cannot shoulder such massive infrastructure costs alone. But here's the counterpoint. Every nation that's ever industrialized did so by taking control of its capital. Whether it was post-war Europe with the Marshall Plan, China with its state banks, or the US with the New Deal, no country ever rose by outsourcing its ambition. Besides, the AES Bank isn't entirely closed to outside funds, it's closed to outside control. Nations like China, Turkey, the UAE, and even Russia have expressed interest in co-financing specific parts of the corridor, not as masters, but as partners. The door is open, but only to those willing to sit at the table, not above it. And then there's the political symbolism. By rejecting Western finance, the Sahel states are rejecting the entire machinery of neo-colonial management. It's a quiet revolution, but its implications are massive. Because if this model succeeds, others will copy it. Guinea, Chad, CAR, maybe even Ghana or Ethiopia. The AES is offering more than a railway. It's offering a financial prototype, a way for African states to finally fund development without trading their dignity. And here's the irony. While Western leaders publicly criticize the move as reckless or unsustainable, private investors are watching with interest. Venture firms, infrastructure funds, and sovereign wealth managers from Asia and the Middle East are now assessing risk models for the region. Why? Because when you own your finances, you also own your future. And that's good business. So why did the Sahel shut out the West? Because sometimes, to build a future worth having, you have to close the gates, hold your ground, and fund it yourself. But money alone doesn't lay tracks. It takes purpose, it takes unity, and most of all, it takes strategy. So, how did three politically pressured, landlocked countries turn a railway into a weapon of regional integration? Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger have long been geographically stranded and politically cornered. Their landlocked positions left them dependent on coastal neighbors for trade. Their economic systems, fragmented and externally oriented, discouraged regional exchange. Worse, the Sahel's colonial-era borders were never meant for cooperation. They were designed to divide, isolate, and weaken. This railway flips that script entirely. It doesn't run toward the sea. They run toward each other. The route is intentionally designed to stitch the Sahel together, economically and politically. By linking their capitals directly, these nations are removing the physical and bureaucratic barriers that kept them siloed. Instead of exporting raw materials out through ports controlled by other nations, they're now laying the groundwork for an internal market, where goods, services, and capital can flow freely within the region first. And it's not just about trains hauling minerals. The deeper goal is to create a common economic space, shared standards, synchronized tariffs, and joint customs policies. The railway becomes the backbone of something larger, a de facto economic union that bypasses the sluggish, top-heavy bureaucracy of ECOWAS. This is AES thinking beyond resistance. This is AES building resilience. Already, policy teams across the three governments are working on harmonizing trade rules and setting up cross-border enterprise zones. Markets in border cities like Sikasso, Fadangorma, and Maradi, once marginal, are being reimagined as regional commercial hubs, supported by fast rail access and shared logistics depots. These are no longer peripheral towns. They're becoming central arteries in a new Sahel economy. But there's another reason this integration matters: stability. Each of the three countries has battled insurgencies, coups, and foreign military interference. Divided, they were vulnerable. United, they become strategically coherent. The railway is more than a freight route. It's a corridor of state presence. Wherever tracks are laid, state infrastructure follows. Border posts, hospitals, telecom towers, schools, and security installations. It's the reassertion of control through connectivity, not coercion. And it's not just hard infrastructure. Cultural and educational exchanges are being integrated along the rail line. Plans are underway to build joint universities and research centers at key junctions, shared curricula, co-developed technology labs, youth training programs that treat AES not as three states but as one rising zone. This is how unity gets embedded, not through speeches, but through systems. It's also worth noting what this integration challenges. ECOWAS, once the symbol of West African cooperation, now looks more like a fractured shell, slow to act, quick to sanction. The Sahel bloc, in contrast, is moving with clarity and urgency. By doing more with fewer members, AES is offering a leaner, faster, and more aligned alternative. And other nations, especially those frustrated with ECOWAS's dependence on Western direction, are watching. The symbolism here runs deep. For decades, Africans have heard the word integration spoken from podiums by leaders in luxury hotels, while roads remained broken and borders hostile. Now, the Sahel is saying less and doing more. A train you can ride beats a slogan you can't touch, and the stakes go beyond just West Africa. If this regional strategy succeeds, it will offer proof of a concept for African integration without external engineering. It will demonstrate that cross-border cooperation doesn't require billion-dollar conferences or donor-driven blueprints. It requires shared problems, shared will, and now shared infrastructure. Burkina Faso brings agriculture. Mali brings industry and mining. Niger brings energy and logistics. Each country contributes what the others lack. And together, they create something stronger. A bloc that trades with itself first, and on its terms with the world second. This isn't unity based on ideology. It's unity based on interdependence, backed by concrete, literally. The railway is just the visible layer. Underneath it runs a political current, one that, if successful, may rewire how the continent thinks about sovereignty and solidarity. So the question becomes, what will this railway and integration produce? Jobs, growth, security, real change for real people? That question isn't rhetorical. The answer is what justifies the entire risk of going it alone. Because in the Sahel, where half the population is under the age of 18, the real war is not just political, it's economic. And for Traoré, Goïta, and Tiani, the railway is not a trophy. It's a tool. A lever to pull a stagnant system into motion. Let's break it down. First, the job engine. From engineers to bricklayers, mechanics to suppliers, the railway project is already creating a ripple of employment opportunities across the three nations. Unlike donor-funded projects, which often bring in foreign contractors and labor, this one is explicitly designed to use domestic labor markets. Ministries of public works in all three capitals have published internal hiring quotas, and local training centers are being scaled up to meet demand. These aren't short-term gigs. They're skill-building pipelines designed to train the next generation of African builders, operators, and transport planners. But jobs are only the start. Once the railway begins operation, it creates a chain reaction across sectors. In agriculture, farmers will finally have fast, reliable access to regional markets. Instead of watching their harvests rot in remote villages, they'll be able to move perishable goods to urban centers within hours. The knock-on effect? Less food waste, higher prices for producers, and more competition in city markets, which can even reduce inflation. In trade, small and medium enterprises will gain access to supply chains that were previously impossible. For example, a textile manufacturer in Bamako can now source raw cotton from Burkina Faso and deliver finished goods to Niamey in a fraction of the time and at lower cost. Logistics companies, storage facilities, and regional wholesalers will spring up around train hubs. These are not megacorp jobs. They're small business opportunities, millions of them. Even tourism, often overlooked in Sahelian economies, gets a boost. Direct high-speed rail between capitals allows for safe, fast, and affordable movement, especially important for domestic and diaspora travel. Cultural festivals, markets, and sporting events can now draw regional crowds. With investment in tourism corridors and guesthouse infrastructure already being planned by local councils, the ripple effect extends beyond economics. It touches identity, pride, and cultural exchange. But perhaps the most important output, and the most under-acknowledged, is psychological. For decades, people in the Sahel have been made to feel like their nations are weak, poor, and dependent. This railway is a rupture in that narrative. It tells a generation of youth, we can build things as good as anyone else, and we can do it on our terms. This matters because the biggest threat in the Sahel today isn't just insurgency, it's hopelessness. It's the sense that young people have no future, no path forward, no reason to stay. That's why armed groups, criminal syndicates, and migration routes continue to pull youth away. But infrastructure changes that equation. It brings visible proof that progress isn't abstract. It's something you can touch, ride, and build, and the benefits won't stay inside the AES triangle for long. Already, Ghana, Chad, and Guinea are in talks to connect future extensions of the line to their territories. What began as a regional project is now shaping into a nucleus of continental connectivity, not because it was sold that way in brochures, but because it works. Functioning rail equals functioning commerce equals real GDP growth. In a continent where many transport dreams remain stuck on paper, that's a gravitational pull. And if that sounds ambitious, that's the point. The Sahel isn't trying to play catch-up anymore, it's trying to leap forward by force of will. The railway isn't a luxury project, it's a survival mechanism with acceleration built in. And the leaders know something else. Delivery is political power. If Traoré, Goïta, and Tiani can show that this project lifts lives, raises wages, lowers food prices, and moves students, traders, and goods, then their legitimacy becomes unshakable. Not by arms, but by action. Because in a region where promises have long been cheap, visible progress becomes priceless. So yes, people are watching the tracks. But do you think this can be scaled? Let us know in the comments section. Can this little triangle of defiance grow into a continent-wide network that changes Africa's fate forever? Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.